The Thanksgiving story is a turducken full of lie, bullcrap, bullshit. Thanksgiving. For many people, it's one of the first lessons they get about American history. The Mayflower, the Pilgrims, Squanto. Plenty of hats, buckles, and feathers made out of colored construction paper. But the standard version is loaded with lies and inaccuracies. It also leaves out some of the most interesting details and promotes ethnocentrism. Let's take a look at how our culture miseducates young Americans from the very start. Before we go any further, James Loewen spends an entire chapter on this subject in his book, Lies My Teacher Told Me. This book is a real eye-opener. I would put it on the same level as Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. Do yourself a favor and check this book out. You're probably familiar with how the Thanksgiving story usually goes. The Pilgrims came to America aboard the Mayflower looking for religious freedom. Lie. After a long journey across the Atlantic, they were overjoyed to see the coastline of the New World and decided to settle right there in Massachusetts rather than continue sailing on to the Virginia colony as planned. They had arrived in November, and after a harsh winter claimed half of their number, they met a native named Squanto, who taught them how to plant crops according to local custom, using fish to fertilize the soil. Squanto became their ambassador, translator, and local guide. When the next fall came around, the Pilgrims were well on their way to starting a successful colony, and they held the first American Thanksgiving with local natives to give thanks for their bountiful harvest. Bullcrap. Some important questions you might have. How did Squanto know how to speak English when the Pilgrims had just rolled into town? Also, why was he so keen to help the English settlers? Here is where the story gets interesting. Squanto knew English because he had been kidnapped and enslaved. Twice. Squanto was first captured and taken to England when he was still a child. After 9 years, he made his way back to Massachusetts, only to be captured again and sold into slavery in Spain. Somehow he escaped and made his way back to England. It's possible there was even a third trip back and forth to Europe mixed in there for as many as 6 transatlantic journeys for Squanto before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. So why was Squanto willing to throw in with the Pilgrims once he finally made his way home again? Because when he got home, every other member of his village was dead. They all perished in a plague epidemic 2 years earlier. Another big detail that gets left out of the Thanksgiving story. Anthropologist Henry Dobbins compiled a list of 93 epidemics among Native Americans between 1520 and 1918. 41 of smallpox, 4 bubonic plague, 17 measles, 10 influenza, 25 tuberculosis, typhus, cholera, and others. In the 3 years before the Pilgrims arrived, it's estimated that plague wiped out between 90 and 96% of the people living in coastal New England, forcing survivors to abandon their homes. Writes Howard Simpson, villages lay in ruins because there was no one to tend them. The ground was strewn with the skulls and the bones of thousands of Indians who had died, and none was left to bury them. That was the homecoming that Squanto got. Then in 1620, the Pilgrims came and chose to settle in that exact spot. Writes Loewen, they chose Plymouth because of its beautiful cleared fields, recently planted in corn, and its useful harbor. It was a lovely site for a town. Indeed, until the plague, it had been a town, for New Plymouth was none other than Squanto's village of Patuxet. It turns out it was commonplace for European invaders to settle right in the middle of the native populations they conquered. James Loewen says that these epidemics were probably the most significant geopolitical event of the early 17th century. Their net result was that the English, for their first 50 years in New England, would face no real Indian challenge. The plagues that emptied out the human population in the New World were no secret to the people at the time. Even before the Mayflower left England, King James thanked Almighty God in his great goodness and bounty towards us for this wonderful plague among the savages. Savages. There's an amusing bit of cognitive dissonance about the story of Squanto teaching colonists how to farm. This is one of the earliest American history lessons most kids get. But then we learn about westward expansion and manifest destiny, how most of America was supposedly an unspoiled wilderness, and that First Nations populations had to be taught how to farm. American school kids are supposed to hold these contradictory ideas in their heads, that natives were both ignorant of agriculture, yet also taught the first European settlers how to do it. The mainstream narrative about Thanksgiving as a happy story of Christian settlers facing the dangers of the New World with the help of some friendly natives is blatant propaganda. Writes Lowen, the archetypes associated with Thanksgiving, God on our side, civilization wrested from wilderness, order from disorder, through hard work and good pilgrim character traits, continue to radiate from our history books. American children are being fed an origin myth. This myth-making goes beyond historical Native into what Robert Bellah calls civil religion. For many Native Americans, Thanksgiving is a day of mourning and protest. This pronouncement sums up why. Thanksgiving Day is a reminder of the genocide of millions of Native people, the theft of Native lands, and the relentless assault on Native culture. Participants in National Day of Mourning honor Native ancestors and the struggles of Native peoples to survive today. It is a day of remembrance and spiritual connection, as well as a protest of the racism and oppression which Native Americans continue to experience. North and South America were not unspoiled wilderness. The first permanent settlements weren't in Plymouth or Jamestown. Recent archaeological evidence suggests human beings have lived on these continents for 25,000 to 30,000 years. American history is a lot older than the Mayflower. Please check out Lies My Teacher Told Me, a fantastic American history book. Please also like, comment, follow, favorite, repost, and follow my Linktree to sign up for my Substack. Let's make them pay.